Hey everyone, welcome back. In this episode I'm going to show you how I made this nose cone. So let's go back to a few days ago. Okay, so I've made this piece in here for the headlight, just joining it on now. And there's still just a bit more stretch needed on this piece here, just so that it naturally rests in the same spot before I start welding it to it. Otherwise it's just going to want to shrink and pull right back up again, so I'd rather it be naturally resting in the same spot for any welding. Okay, so something like this nose cone is a pretty grueling task. It's a lot of smashing with a mallet to stretch it where you need it to be, and that's the not fun side of metal shaping. It's so much physical labor of hitting the metal to stretch it where you need it to be. And with this side I'll probably end up trimming this off and remaking this piece, because I'm just leaving this here for strength at the moment, just so I've got something to hold on to while I can stretch this area down, because this side was actually a bastard to try and make that little piece on its own and try and hold it. It just wanted to twist and contort everywhere, so I'd rather be able to hang on to it while I stretch it all down and then just trim it off. I cobbled this hillbilly contraption together just on a lazy Sunday. I had 2 air cylinders laying around doing nothing, and a few pins and like little hinge points and stuff like that. And I just had the old pedals set up and the valve set up from an old press brake project. So just saves a lot of manual hitting, and you can hold on to the piece with 2 hands. So it's a bit more controlled blows, saves your shoulder a ton as well, so you can do really light blows on it. And the reason I've just got it set up as a single hit instead of like a repetitive motion hit is because if I wanted repetitive motion I would just use the machines and the dies, whereas this I can just do big controlled blows without ruining my forearm and shoulder. So as you can see, this area here just requires a ton of stretch to come down, so instead of me bashing a million times with the mallet, I'll just use the ghetto helve hammer and just stretch that area right down with big blows, and then I'll tidy it up by hand a bit more before I go in the machine. And then probably the most frustrating part about the whole journey is once you start to planish it out, it wants to lift right back up again. So the problem with big reversers is you just got to keep stretching. Like, it's just such a frustrating process. It feels like you're getting nowhere. It feels like you've just hit the panel for hours, and then you start planishing it and it just changes shape completely wrong to what you wanted to do. So it's not a fun job. And would you look at that, back to the depression simulator. It looks ugly as shit again because you've had to stretch it all back down just to start heading back in the right direction. Yeah. And then as you start to blend the big blows all between those with the mallet, this area will start to splay up. So it's just it feels like a losing battle the whole time, really. Probably one of the most frustrating things at the very start for me is I would pretty much rage because I would spend hours hitting a panel and it just went from good to complete shit in like 2 minutes, and I would just fucking lose my shit thinking, why does this not work? And now after years of whacking and throwing away so many pieces, I'm finally starting to understand it a bit more, and I see the whole process for what it is. And I think figuring out where to shrink and where to stretch at the very start is also one of the most frustrating things, because older me would have looked at this and thought, oh cool, it's bunching up here, I'll just shrink this area down and it'll lay that area down. But all that's going to do is just raise this center right up, and then you've got a big high spot here, so you've actually just got to blend it all and stretch all that area out. Like, it might need a very little section here shrunk by the time I get all this laying down, but I'll see at the end. I'd rather do that last, because if I shrink it now it could just be problems later on. It might gather itself naturally once I lay this down, then I've just got to shrink it all by hand. And sure enough, back to getting it pretty smooth, and up she goes. So this is where you just want to pull your hair out, really bang your head against the panel, because it fucking does your head in. And after another 15 minutes of whacking, Congratulations. It's a crumpled piece of dog shit. Yeah. So your hands are really killing you at this point, and it's not hard to see why. You give up and you just chop that section off and just focus on that area, and then you do that piece separately, because yeah, most of the time it's such a fucking uphill battle that you just feel like you're getting nowhere. After hours, you spent half the day bashing and the piece looks like a crumpled bit of dog shit. So that's the true reality of metal shaping. It's 90% slog and like 5 to 10% reward. And you get really angry, and you hit as hard as you can, and you split the sandbag, which only leads to make you fucking angrier. You contemplate why you do this as a job often, probably 20 times a day. You think, surely there's easier things to do in life. Okay, so after nearly having a mental breakdown, you can see that it is going in the right direction, so it sort of gives you hope to push on. It's just this center section now that needs to be stretched right down. So much work. Really looks like just a simple shape on camera, but it's a pretty drastic amount of stretching. Because my hands can't even hit anymore, they're so dead, I just use machine assist just to try and rough me back out to where I want to be. And then once I put a few heavy blows in it to shape it, I'll use the concave dies in this little machine just to get some rapid stretch in some areas. This is pretty much where I throw in the towel, because I tried to use the concave dies and they just chew the fuck out of the panel. So I don't like using the machine for the rapid stretch, so I'm just going to give up. I'll chop here and I'll just battle on with this piece, and then I'll just make that center section separate, same as how I've done on the other side. Bye bye, fucker. So after lopping off the excess bit of shit, it's allowing me to do what I want to do, really. It's not fighting me. It's not all this strength of that panel there was just holding this area up, just really not letting me get the shape I want. So now I've just got to focus on just getting that down a little lower, and should be sweet. Just because you've cut it down smaller, it doesn't make it any easier. As soon as you touch this area and want to go down further, it just contorts and fucks around so much. It's just the added strength of having that area there does allow you to hit this area in a bit easier, but it just wants to lift and go crazy. Like, you really underestimate the shape of some panels before you do this. This is where I'll use the linears to my advantage. It just stretches one way, same as putting like a rubber band on the English wheel. It only stretches 2D, not 3D. So this will stretch this way if I go here, and it'll go this way if I use the dies this way. So it's good for reverse curves. But as you can see, it's not just as simple as feeding it in the dies and it takes away all your problems. It's still a lot of navigation and figuring out where it actually needs to stretch and combat the contorting and distortion of the metal. So back to the sandbag to rough those areas out, and then just finalize them with the machine. But you still got to use, it's a lot of manual labor still. Okay, so once you've nearly got the divot in there, it really wants you to stretch this lip so you can start getting this shape back into it. Strategic nightmare, reverse curves. Okay, so what was pretty much half a day of whacking, I'm pretty much there now. Just got to punish this blend a bit nicer. But man, that might look easy on camera. I can assure you that is one of the hardest shapes on this fucking car. Same as the other side. So I'll get that joined up, make this center section of the nose cone, then try and tie all this together and make this area on a non-damaged car. That way I can relieve this, pull it all out, and I know that the car's going to be where it should be. Okay, so I've got the nose cone all stitched together, just tacked, just while I give it a planish and finalize the shape while it's joined. I've got this side made. Now I've just got to do this infill section, and I did notice when I sat this on my Cosmo, it really shows how down the actual nose is. Like, it's so flimsy, so the nose actually has to be pulled right up, I reckon about 40 mil. So obviously it's been hit here and it's creased the top of the line there, so it's probably also going to need another nose cone to be made, so I'll probably end up making 2 of them and putting one on this car as well. So really thankful to have this car that's not damaged at all. So it's been a really good reference point, otherwise I would have been pissing in the dark. So yeah, we'll focus on getting this piece made, and I'm going to try and do the upper of the guard as well. I kind of want to get all this tied together and then make the bonnet opening. It's also crusty, so I'll make the bonnet opening. Now they're all Series 1 cars, but this one has a Series 2 Valance on it. So I have the Series 1 Valance as well. I kind of like the Series 2 one, so I'll ask the customer which one he likes and we'll recreate it for this car. Now the upper cowl area is pretty crusty on these vents, but they would be a really tricky thing to make. So I might actually have a play around with some tooling on the weekend. I'm just curious on how you'd go about them. I'm pretty sure I know how to make them, but it would just be a bit of a dick around to make a jig to get them all on the same plane and accurate. Okay, piece cut. Just get to work shaping it. And I'm not going to do any grid work on there. I can see the track lines from the wheel, so I'm just going to go multiple passes the other way diagonally and then see what more it needs. Basically it needs not much shape in the center, it just needs the ends pulled down. Okay, so sat back on, the panel will tell you what it needs. Once this corner has to come down, it's going to lift that side up. So I've just gone to the sandbag, stretched these corners just to let it really splay around. Bloody bonnet hinge in the way. As you can see, the corners are starting to pull down. Tricky shape, this one. So back to the mallet, stretch this area and this area, and then smooth the dents out with either the wheel or the linear dies. And once it removes, it's got like the panel will sort of have a flop. If it's still flopping, there's too much tension there. This one's holding shape, so you got to get the arrangement set pretty much. Like, if you get the panel there and it's still flopping, sort of bend it over your knee till it gets to a point where it stops fighting itself, and that's where it'll show you where it needs. This corner might rise right up and it'll say, okay, I need stretch here. Whereas this area is good, it just needs that stretched. If you have to force it into place, it's not the right shape, so just keep going. I need to get one of those head-mounted cameras. I've only got one arm, so you can see if I push this, that corner will lift up and tell me that that wants to be stretched down. So I can either go 2 ways. I can have that corner sitting down and bring this area down, or I can leave this area and focus on stretching this corner. And when we want that corner to come down, we hit. So we'll stretch this area down and then wheel out the dents, or use the linear dies to just straighten up all the dents and smooth them out. You can see as I'm stretching this area here, the corner is going down, but the corner is wanting to splay up. So you just get the mallet and then you go back over this area and you keep blending until you get a nice consistent flow downwards. Okay, so that's probably down enough now to smooth that area out, and then it'll be a nice consistent flow. And you might think, oh gee, that takes a fucking long time. It sure does. That's why you don't see this on TV, otherwise it would be a 2-hour episode of just some monkey hitting a panel with a mallet. You just want to see the instant gratification, 30 seconds he just wheeled the car in and it's got a whole new fucking everything. That's not how it is. The reality is it's 95% struggle, 5% reward. So even after smoothing that out, it's still telling us it wants more. It wants more in the very center to roll right over, and this to come over as well. So we've got 2 options here. We can leave that push down and then start on this side, which is what I think I'll do. I think I'll attack this area that really wants to pull down, because I know this area is flat, so I don't really want to start curling that in too hard. I'd rather leave that blending smooth. I'll attack this side now and get that area pulled down. Okay, so now I'm chasing the perimeter where I know the nose sweeps down in those areas. So there you go, smooth this out now, probably stretch it a touch more. So normal process, after more work it suddenly looks worse. And bunching up here in the middle, which old me would have thought, oh, it just needs to be shrunk there. But I'm pretty sure it actually needs to be stretched in that area. It's like the opposite to what you think. And once again, down we go. It feels like it's a losing battle at this point, but it just requires so much more stretch than you think. That's where it's naturally wanting to sit now. Now it's telling me that the center needs some. Centerpiece, just a few tic tacs along there to hold it. Got a little bit of spring happening in the center here. Now I'm not sure if it's because this has pressure against it, because the headlight is pushed across. The headlight's meant to be here, so it's pushed over about an inch. So I've got to transfer it to the other car before I can get this headlight area in the right spot. So I'll transfer this onto the black car now to sit it on top. I can't actually drill any holes or anything like that. I can only clamp it to the car, and then I'll get this in the right spot, and that way I know how far to pull this out as well. Alright, because I can't drill holes in this car, I'm going to cheat here and use the badge hole. The corner of the badge hole will be perfect. And there we go, Clico in reverse. So I now have to make this light bucket area and then join it to this piece. Okay, so just made up the headlight piece, tipping die on the bead roller, real easy. So I'm going to join those two together now. So trim the front of this edge off and start joining them together. Okay, so front edge trimmed off. Just going to trim around this headlight piece now so that it gives like a 10mm border. So my puzzle pieces are made. Sometimes you got to play with them a little bit just to cut them and get all your edges and stuff lining up nice. But that's all part of it. So once you're really happy with how they're all fitting, go ahead, chuck some tacks on, and then grab the next piece, put that in, and then you're going to have to pull it off because this is going to want to really rise up. And with this peak, this started to lift up because it wants to shrink as soon as you weld it. So you got to pull it off and planish it back down. I should be able to get all this tied together on this car though, and then I'll pull it off, give it a planish, buzz the welds down a little bit, and I'll recheck it and see what it needs before fully welding it, and then check it on the car again and then put it on to the green one. Okay, so tack together. Had a bit of a misalignment issue here that's just lifting up a touch, so I've got to take it off to hit it back down. Gave it a quick bump up in any areas that were low or misaligned of the panel. So now I can go check it back on the car again and see what it needs. You're best to do any of your shaping while you've got it stitched, tacked together, because once you weld that, if it's out of alignment, then you're in for a world of pain. Checking on the car now, seems to be fitting good. So I can just pull it off and just bump just these areas that are not aligned very nicely. Just got to do those and then I can start welding it up. So I've given it a hand planish, but there's a few areas where I want to just chuck it in the machine just to bump it, and hopefully I don't make a fucking mess. Okay, so I've just given it a wipe over with Scotch-Brite so I can see what's going on. Just got to address a few little areas still. I just want to planish up before I start welding it. You pretty much really want to be happy with your shape before you start welding it and start distorting it even more. So using the combination of the slapper and just a normal hand dolly, I'm going to bring this area up, a few little wobblies. So that's for this area here, just trying to bring this up Get the two faces to be perfect before any welding commences. So I'll probably go here next. You can just see with the light there, it's a little bit wavy. So I'll just pick up that area there. The rest seems to be pretty well on the same plane. Enough to start welding anyway. I just don't know how this is going to carry on because there's a lot of welding on this piece, like a 7-piece KFC dinner box. So this is simple tools. I made this just out of a leaf spring and an old Pitman arm from a Hilux. Just welded the two together and just polished it up. And I made an electric version of a Milwaukee nailer. Just made it bolt on to the original Milwaukee skin, no mods. And that helps a lot. That takes a lot of hours out of manually hitting. But on something like this where it's so awkward, I'd rather the panel be hung up before I try and use something like that. So most of my work it's probably 90%, 95% by hand, and then I'll just use a machine just to blend like a little area here that's just quicker to chuck the appropriate dye in the machine just and smooth that area out to finalize it. So anyone interested in how to make that, I've got a link that I'll put up on my Instagram. I did a how-to post of how I went about making that. It doesn't take long, a few hours. So the best part about not sanding anything is it's shiny and you can see exactly what's going on. There's no hiding anything. There's no light tricks, there's no fucking primer on there, there's just nothing. It's just you and what you've made. There's no lying to yourself here, it's just it's all to see. So this is where you can really chase it to be better and better. So really tricky shape this one. You can see just how much it swoops and flows everywhere. Like it might look flat on camera in a picture if you see it in front of one of these cars, but yeah, it's far from it. It's really complex shape. And as to no surprise why it kicked my ass when I tried this in one piece. It's the first panel I tried on the car and I thought, oh yeah, sweet, I'll do it from here to here, that'll be fucking easy. Yeah, sure kicked my ass, I tell you. Could not work out why it would not do what I wanted to do, and yeah, greatly underestimated how much shape there was in this panel. So before I weld anything, I think I'm going to trim this lip down and make this area just to hold it in shape. I really don't want it to peak up and be able to lift off, so I think I'm going to join it to this front bonnet lip first, just to prevent any unnecessary warping. I don't really want to try and have to get that area back down. I'd rather it be held there. Other than that though, it's fitting really well everywhere, so it's at a weldable point. It's just, yeah, I want to make this bonnet lip first. Now annoyingly I'd love to make this in one piece and then just join it along here, but because I've got it seated on this car, it's not going to let me, so I'm going to have to make it just join here. It's going to have to sit it in there, and then I'm going to have to make this internal lip after, which is annoying because I can get that out of one piece, but just to be able to have this held in the right spot and know the nose cone's at the right height and everything, I'm just going to have to do it this way. So, which is not the end of the world, it is all spotted along there to the internal anyway, so it's not going to hurt to have another join there for this inner perimeter. So to make something like this, there's numerous ways you can do it, but to me I find the easiest way is just do a simple fold, 10mm, and then shrink that edge until you get the desired radius of this, and then you can mark from this side the top, which is here, and then you can run that in the bead roller and tip that over, and then once that's over it's going to be too flat, so you're going to have to stretch that edge to get the radius all to match again. So it's not a hard job, just a little fiddly and time consuming thing. I barely film it because I've already shown how to do it multiple times. It just becomes boring. I'll do a brief little one. So you just put it on there and then just keep shrinking until you get the desired radius. Just mark it with a texter. On my shrinker, my kick shrinker is just only here, so I can just keep walking to and from. Normally you just bring it right next to the car, that way you don't have to do 100 walks, or make a cardboard template of the piece and take that to the shrinker. Okay, so once you got your inner radius pretty well sorted, You're going to have to trim this down to the bit longer than what you need, probably like 30mm height, and then you're going to have to stretch that to get the arc this way before you mark this edge here and tip that over. Had a bit of a brain fart. I should have just guillotined this piece to size when it was flat. Now I have to do it, put the shear dies in and cut it while it's on a curve. Idiot. Okay, so once the inside radius is pretty much sorted, you're going to have to stretch this area and shrink this area to pull that up and to give this the arc it needs before you can mark and tip this edge here. Otherwise you'll do that and just it won't work at all. Okay, so that's the edges given a little shrink just to pull them up, and you'll see once I rotate this to the right plane, you'll see what has to happen to the center. So the center has to be stretched here to give it that arc. Okay, as you can see, you gotta go a touch more just in this area, and then we're nearly there. So as I said before, the disadvantage of only sitting the panels over the top is I can't do that lip at the same time, because you can't do two. It'll grow, the panel I make will be too small. It'll be the inside diameter of that, whereas if you only let it lap over once, by the time it sits in there when you cut the other panel out, that 1mm on top of 1mm corrects itself, and you only have to tighten up like an opening. You have to tighten that edge up a mil the whole way. Okay, so you've got the shape fitting well. It's time to mark this edge now, and then you're going to tip that with the bead roller. So scribe this line and then take it over to the bead roller to tip it. So I normally just set the wheel up so that you can use the base as a guide, and you just hold it against the wheel, that way it can't run off track. Save trying to set up a fence when the piece is so curved. It'll only literally be meeting here, but even then the piece is too short to use the fence properly. So you got to come up with other little ideas, unless you just manually watch it, which you got to do as well. It's easy to run off track this way. So it's all a little strategic nightmare. So we're just going to run this in, wind it down, moderate pressure. You don't really need to go crazy with it. You're going to do multiple passes, probably like 10 passes on this to get it to tip right over. It's a lot for it to stretch. Now your first pass is probably the most crucial one. Okay, so just faintly tips it on there in your first pass. Okay, so that's like 8 passes, and it's only got it to about a 45. It just requires so much stretch to pull that around. So I'm going to switch to the linear dies now and just start stretching that, and it will force it over where it needs to be. So this area here is the main area that needs so much stretch to let it wrap around, and you can see just how much it wants to contort and carry on when you're trying to stretch that edge around, which is the bonnet opening. To get this to lay down requires a lot of stretch. So I've got to take it to the bench now just to quickly just tidy that back up to the shape it's got to be, and then I'll probably run it through the bead roller again a few times just to get the line back to being upright where it needs to be, and then just keep alternating between the two until I get a good result. Now the reason the ends always get wonky and twisted is because there's no material on the other side to hold and lever against, so it's the weakest point really. It's got nothing to fight against it, so it just goes wherever it can go. Let's take a see at what's happening here, and it's just wanting to contort and go crazy, because as you can see it takes a hell of a lot of stretch to get that to lay down. So keep going with it, and it should relieve itself and start to lay down where it needs to be, because we've already created the correct shape and radius in that bottom piece. So it's just the problem now lies in this top piece, stretching that enough for it to lay down. Okay, so how's it looking? It's getting there. So just going to need some manual tightening of this edge down, so I've got to sharpen this up manually just by using hammer and dolly, or hammer and anvil. Okay, so I'm pretty much ready just to trim the top lip of it now. I've got it all sitting pretty well. Okay, so clamped in place, just got to trim this edge down to a nice border that I can join onto the nose cone. Okay, so that's trimmed and clamped in place, sitting nice everywhere. Ready to add the nose cone to it now. Okay, so top half just clamped on, just got to scrub this, and then I'll cut the nose cone to suit, and hopefully I can join these two together. Okay, so top lip's welded on, got to pull it off, planish it, check it again, and then fully weld it up. So I'll post like a little during video here, and the reason I don't do much during videos is the music stops when I'm filming, so I like to work with music. I pretty much feel very awkward if there's no music playing. I hate working in silence. Okay, so panel using this handle here, and this is where it becomes bit yoga. Yeah, it's pretty much why I leave most of that out. It's the same process, it's just hammering for hours and hours and hours, so it's easier for me just to leave the music playing and just keep ripping. I'm pretty much gonna weld this now. The joins are as good as I can get them. Ready to just start doing them one by one. I'll probably do the center first, and then I'm gonna planish that area. And just so it doesn't get away from me, because it's a lot of welding. Ready to start welding. I'm going to do the center join first. Planished all the joins up and they seem to be alright. So I expect a lot of warpage and distortion, because it's a hell of a lot of welding when there's 8 pieces to this panel. Crazy amount of work. This one really underestimated it. Okay, so that's the first weld. As expected, it's starting to lift. It wants to, because it's shrinking when you're heating it up, when you're welding it, it wants to really peak up. So I'm going to go buzz the excess of this weld off and then planish it back down to stretch the weld back out. Someone with more experience would probably zap around the whole panel, but I'm just going to go each join, just try and keep it manageable, because I can see this turning to shit and me driving over it in the backyard. Okay, so that's the first weld done. Sitting back on, and there we go. We can see the metal of the bonnet underneath it. It's at the perfect height, so it's down to the right level. Just got to planish it out nicer. Okay, so I run over with the file. We'll show you your lows that you got to pick up now. So I think everywhere will come up good except for these marks. The bottom die in the thumbnail shrinker was loose. I didn't notice, and it just fucking marred it right up. So there's a little low spot where all those bite marks are, so I'll see if I can get those out. I hope I can. Okay, so it seems to be coming up pretty good. Just that the little bite marks I'm still chasing, but other than that, definitely coming up good. Okay, so we can see we're still at the right height for the bonnet, and pretty happy with how the joint is going. Progressing along really well. Just needs more hours spent just planishing, just to really pick up the microscopic little lows and stuff that are there. But I might start welding the rest of the joins now, and then just do them all little manageable pieces. So the phone ran out of memory recording, but it's all welded now. So get to knocking the weld down and then hours of punishing from here. Okay, so that's all welded. I buzzed the weld down with just an 80 on a flapper and then just wire wheeled the heat affected zone off. So I think I'm just going to planish from here on and then just keep knocking any excess weld and stuff off until it gets better and better. Okay, so I've just gone around and planished areas, given it a file here and there so I can see what's going on. And there's a lot of work to do here. Massive job. Okay, so it's really coming along now. Really starting to look way more decent than before. So I'm just going to hit it with the whizzer now, just to get rid of all the super shininess from the 80 flapper. And it'll let me see what's going on a bit better, I think. Okay, so I gave it a hit with the 80 on the DA, and this just shows me anywhere shiny is low. So now I can go along my little pane circuit and just do laps and just chase all these little lows and bring them all up. Okay, so I've gone over this area once and you can see they're starting to disappear. Just starting here again now. So just keep chasing around and around until all the shinies disappear. That way I know all my lows are gone. I can give it another buzz and then I can check again and go around again. Coming up a lot better now. I've just got probably one more lap that I'll do around it before I hit it again with the whizzer, and then I'll see what that brings up and chase it a bit further. Okay, so this is hit with 180 on the DA, so now you can really see any scarring and imperfections. So this will let me chase things right up and planish things a bit further. But looking good, looking better than what was there anyway. Fitting pretty good now, just got it hung back on the car. Give it a check over, and yeah, really can't complain with how it's all fitting up. Just little imperfections just to keep going with, a lot more hours to spend if you want to chase up little points like this. Some scarring and stuff from other tooling, but it's looking good. So now that I know this is made to suit this non-crashed car and it's all in the right spot, I can transfer it to the other one, and I know how far to pull all this nose out to get it to meet. And then the next piece of the puzzle I'll make this section, same as the other side, and then the whole guard again. So I've got to add the crease, which goes from the very center, it's just a peak on the bonnet. I've got to chuck it in the bead roller to do that. And then I can add the badge holes if I want to put them in there. I think I'll just leave those till very last. If we don't end up getting badges for the car, then we'll drill them later. Okay, so got it hung back on this car, and you can see just how far the front is across. It won't even let me sit it on. So there's mega tension there, and the headlight bucket is way beyond. It's hard to see in there, but yeah, headlight bucket's way over. So can probably relieve this front and pull it out, and hopefully this comes a long way with it. But yeah, I've just got to wait until I get a pulling system before I can attack this side. So from here I'm probably just going to chase the rest of the imperfections and stuff on this nose cone, and I might even have a try at making the lower valance, because this car doesn't have one at all. And I've got a Series 1 and Series 2 valance. I've got a Series 2 one on mine, and I've got a Series 1 valance hanging up. So just going to ask him which one he wants, and then we'll get started recreating it. Okay, so I'm going to stop things here. I'm probably going to take a break on this car and get started on Richard's black one. So thanks for watching, and I'll post up shortly.